The Sports Renegades podcast on SportsTownChicago.com.
Say what's on my mind at any given time of day, cause I'm a renegade. Never been afraid to holler about anything.
All right, welcome in to the Sports Renegades here on SportsTownChicago.com. I'm Ryan Stuprich.
And I'm Ryan Risky, and last week we promised it. Ryan and I both made up a list of the top 5 worst moves made by Chicago sports teams' front offices within the last 10 years.
Yes.
We both came up with our own list, and we're going to do that in our first segment today. Also on the show, we're going to have Chris Simpson of the Daily Blitz call in at 6:40 again to talk about the NFL playoffs. We'll have some baseball news. Some more signings happened. We're going to be going through what's wrong with the Bulls, and how long can the Blackhawks keep this streak up? And
the rest of the season. It's going to be the rest of the season.
And could this compare to the streak that they had at the start of the 2013 season? All coming up tonight on the Sports Renegades. First, we've got our top 5 worst moves. I kind of made an honorable mention as a 6th, just to try to get each team one on here.
Okay. You can start to take out my thing.
I'll start with the honorable mention. This is for the Blackhawks, so hint, hint, they didn't have any other moves on my list. And that was after winning the Stanley Cup in 2010. They traded Dustin Byfuglien, Brent Sopel, Ben Eager, and Akeem Alou for Jeremy Morin, Marty Reasoner, and 2 draft picks. I haven't seen one speck of a return from this trade, from trading a guy like Byfuglien, who's a franchise defenseman, and Brent Sopel, who's just kind of like a Nicholas Hjalmarsson, blocks pucks, plays good defense.
Right. I did not have a Blackhawk on my list.
Yeah,
it's just because I don't know much about it, but they've done so well. I'm like, how could they possibly have made a bad move? But I do agree.
Right, especially within the
Dustin Byfuglien for nothing.
The problem is the last 10 years, there's really not much, and then there's signing Cristobal Huet to that outrageous deal, and then him being run out of town within a couple years.
I remember that. Yes.
I was deciding between those two.
Okay, yeah.
So now we're going to go to our number 5 on the list. Mine is the Bears trading Greg Olsen to the Panthers for a 3rd-round pick.
Yes, absolutely. That is absolutely should be on anybody's list.
That is just an awful trade, and it's going to be on display what a great pass catcher Greg Olsen is. And how do you get a 3rd-round pick for one of the best pass-catching tight ends? And it's not just that he's one of the best catchers. He's probably one of the fastest tight ends in the NFL, too.
Yes, he is.
Back-to-back 1,000 receiving yard seasons. He probably can catch in between 6 and 10 touchdown passes. He's so huge for that offense, especially in an offense that lacks big playmakers.
You can thank Mike Martz for that.
And Jerry Angelo.
Sure.
You can say, oh, well, they used that 3rd-round pick to trade for Brandon Marshall. Yeah, well, that trade got us nothing. He's gone after 3 years.
That's another bad one.
Yeah. That was good for the first couple of years.
Yes.
It was just the 3rd year it looked bad, and then he got shipped off for a 5th-round pick.
Right.
What was your number 5?
My number 5 was Carlos Boozer.
Oh, yeah.
The acquisition of Carlos Boozer.
The 5-year, $75 million contract.
Yes.
That is a bad one.
That is a bad one. I thought about putting it higher up on the list, but he did have some good moments. He wasn't, a horrible offensive player, obviously. He was pretty good offensively. He just couldn't play defense.
Seems like only his first couple of years, though, he was good offensively. He couldn't stay healthy.
Right.
He was mediocre rebounding. He'd have some good games against bad teams, except usually in the games against really good teams are when he'd put up those 5-point performances.
Yeah, I also have an honorable mention who was from the same team. He didn't make the list, but I thought about putting him on the list.
Derrick Rose?
No, Rip Hamilton.
Oh,
just because nothing worked out, and that they were still trying to beat Miami.
I remember when they said
everyone thought it was such a good signing. It ended up being horrible. He barely played. He was always hurt.
I remember that signing, and I remember when they made that, and I looked at his stats, and I was just like, this guy never plays. He plays in like 50 or 60 games a year, and they're like, oh, yeah, this is the missing piece. It's like, yeah, no, it's really not. I thought it was a bad signing when they made it because there was plenty of other good shooting guards out there that they could have signed. They signed him, and, well, they his first year he was okay when he played. One of my favorite Rip Hamilton moments is there's actually two of them. Home opener in his first year, and they announced the starting lineup, and then they announced Ronnie Brewer was starting shooting guard, and Neil Funk was like, well, I guess apparently Ronnie Brewer is starting today. Richard Hamilton is out. We're not really sure why. We'll wait to get a clarification on that. And I was just like, oh man, this is the beginning of the end. And then another one when I think it was the Spurs they were playing. He walked into a guy, fell down, holding his shoulder, and he separated his shoulder.
Yes, I remember that.
Yeah, he healed very slow from his injuries.
Right, and. Yeah, that was a bad one, and that was a good honorable mention for me.
That was. I do have a Bulls move on my list. I now have one for each team, and my number 4 goes to the White Sox for trading Gio Gonzalez, Ryan Sweeney, and Faustino de Los Santos. I mean, the latter two don't really mean much, except Gio Gonzalez, one of the top left-handed pitchers in the game, former 21-game winner, had a couple seasons with an ERA under 3.
Yes,
they traded those guys to the A's for Nick Swisher, who batted .219 in his first season and only season with the White Sox, became a hated man because he couldn't hit left-handed, he couldn't hit right-handed pitching, and then they shipped him off to the Yankees for Wilson Betemit, and then I think he was released by the White Sox during the season. So they got that was a terrible move.
Yes, it was. Number 4 for me is one that was very recent, and it is a White Sox one as well. Last year, they got Adam LaRoche, and that is number 4 on my list. He had an awful season last year, and I don't think it's going to get any better.
Batted .207 with 12 home runs, making $13 million. Yeah, it doesn't get much worse than that. So that's pretty ironic. We both have White Sox as the number 4. I mean,
I have another White Sox too, but he's higher.
And then I think I might know who it is.
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, obviously, the Nationals probably are just loving Gio Gonzalez. I mean, he's had some great seasons. He's anchored a pitching staff. I mean, I think it was 2012. He was arguably the best pitcher on their pitching staff.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Oh, yeah.
He's had many 200-inning, 200 strikeout seasons for them. So, I mean, a good return for them. Number 3 is my Bulls one. I had them trading LaMarcus Aldridge, who they drafted with the number 2 pick in that draft, and they traded him to Portland for Tyrus Thomas and Victor Caruppa.
Of course. Yes, that one is bad.
That was a very bad trade, especially how LaMarcus Aldridge turned into a franchise player for Portland. You can be like, oh, well, if they had kept Aldridge, they wouldn't have gotten Rose. And it's like, well, with all these injuries, that wouldn't have been a bad thing.
Right.
They had a really good year with Rose, and then he's just not the same. I mean, could you imagine, though, if they had LaMarcus Aldridge right now as the face of the team?
Yeah, that would be, it'd be a lot different, of course. But I think that the team would have went a little further, possibly would have made a finals appearance.
Yeah, you never know.
I think in 2011
they probably wouldn't have made the Boozer signing if they had him as the power forward.
Right.
So, I mean, that's a shame because, I mean...
And he'd also still be playing.
He'd still be playing, and he'd probably still be with the Bulls because they haven't had any other players that could have been looked at as the face of the franchise where he kind of got upset that people were giving Damian Lillard most of the credit for the Portland turnaround.
Right. My number 3 is the Greg Olson trade. So I had that a little higher.
Bad trade. I mean, there's really no way to go about it. When they traded him, that was back when they were deploying a receiving core of Devin Hester. I think that year was the year they signed Roy Williams. Roy Williams, Earl Bennett,
and
Johnny
then the
Knox,
replacement for Greg Olson was Kellen Davis, and I mean he couldn't catch anything.
And Kellen Davis. So I mean those were the guys that Jay Cutler was throwing to that year, and that really says a lot.
Yeah. So that's number 3. So
number 2,
5 was Boozer. 4 for me. 4 was Adam LaRoche. 3 was Greg Olson.
Mine went number 5 was Greg Olson, number 4 was Gio Gonzalez, and number 3 was LaMarcus Aldridge.
Yep.
My number 2 is the Cubs signing Milton Bradley.
Yes.
There's nothing halfway decent you could say about this move. Every single thing that could have gone wrong with this move went wrong. Everyone in the clubhouse hated him. He was overpaid. He did nothing.
He didn't know how many outs there were.
Essentially, they literally just dumped him off to Seattle to get another bad contract and Carlos Silva in return.
And that was also the start of the Cubs being bad for like 5 seasons because they still ended up with a pretty good record.
That
in
year
2009.
they finished 83 and 81.
Yeah, but they finished 2 games above 500, which is okay. But they
except they didn't play like it because because remember they signed him because Lou Piniella wanted a left-handed hitter, a left-handed power hitter, and for whatever reason Milton Bradley could not hit. And then he blamed Chicago for his struggle. He's like, I've been a really good player in all the other teams I played for, it must be the city of Chicago is the problem.
He batted what? He batted 240 something.
I think 257 he finished with, except there was like a 180 as a left-handed batter. And I think he hit like 320 as a right-handed batter though. So pretty much he did the exact opposite of what they needed. They needed him to hit as a left-handed batter to give them that left-handed power bat, and he could not hit.
Right. I remember. I think that season sort of fell apart in August or September at some point.
It was kind of in June when Aramis Ramirez separated his shoulder, and that was when the offense decided they couldn't score runs.
Yeah.
The offense could not score.
Although I was at a game in late July when they swept the Reds, and they were in first place after sweeping the Reds for a short time, only for like a day or two.
And then they decided they didn't know how to score runs again.
Right. So that's very good at number 2. My number 2 is Adam Dunn.
And I figured that was the other White Sox.
Which I'm assuming that's your number 1, but I don't know, maybe not. But yeah, my number 2 is the Adam Dunn acquisition.
4 years,
not good.
$52 million, and in the first year he batted 153. And I remember Ozzie Guillen benched him at the end of the season because I think he had 223 strikeouts, and the MLB record was 224, set by Mark Reynolds. So Ozzie benched him for like the last 2 weeks of the season just so he wouldn't break the record because he would have shattered it.
I mean, I guess something good was his one good year was the year that the White Sox were good and almost made the playoffs.
Yeah, I think he hit 44 home runs that year.
Right, and his average was pretty respectable.
That year he batted 205.
Yeah, but I mean, with all the home run production, it really is not that bad.
40-plus home runs, still struck out a lot. And then the year after, I think that was when he got the average into the 215s.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Except then he was only hitting about 20, 25 home runs.
Yes, and striking out and popping up every
Striking out, yeah. I mean, yeah. He did walk some, except, I mean, that was a bad signing. They couldn't wait to get rid of him.
Yes.
And he's retired. I'm surprised some team didn't try to give him put a flyer on him, just because he has a left-handed power, and the power's a need right now.
Yeah.
So, all right, I'll let you go with your number 1 first.
All right. Well, my number 1 is Milton Bradley, just because he was a Cubs
for
player.
the reasons explained.
Yes.
That was bad, and it was a good thing that Jim Hendry even acknowledged that was a terrible signing after he traded him. My number 1 is the hiring of Mark Trestman.
Okay, yes. I wasn't thinking coaches. That did cross my mind, but I just want to stay with players. But that would definitely be on my list.
It's not just the hire that makes it number 1. It's who they hired him over and what happened as a result. They could have hired reigning NFL Coach of the Year, Bruce Arians,
who's in the NFC Championship and could make a Super Bowl.
I think he's a 3-time head coach of the year, or at least a 2-time. He's won it at least once with the Cardinals. He might have won it twice. So
I think he won it with the Colts in 2012
He won it with the Colts,
and
then he won another time with the Cardinals, and I don't remember if he won it a second time with the Cardinals, except regardless, one of the great offensive minds in the game.
Yes.
Carson Palmer's had probably the best couple seasons of his career under Bruce Arians.
Mm-hmm.
They've had a great defense. He's not, even though he's a more of an offensive mind and kind of a quarterbacks kind of guy, they still had a great defense.
And they were able to overcome the Aaron Rodgers heroics. They're like the only team that's been able to overcome that so far.
They have great play calling because of Bruce Arians. They have a good offense. They have a good defense. They have a balanced attack through the air and on the ground. And when they're throwing it, they can throw it downfield. And another coach they hired Mark Trestman over was Mike McCoy, who was at the time looked at as the premier offensive mind that was available. And he's been a great offensive mind for San Diego. He's just had trouble with his team not being able to stay healthy, and just a lack of talent. However, he did fix Phillip Rivers, and he's been having some great seasons under Mike McCoy. And you saw what he did with Phillip Rivers. He probably could have done that with Jay Cutler.
Yeah, it's just interesting. They decided to hire somebody who
no one knew anything about.
And I mean, he was a champion in the Canadian Football League.